Welcome. Today we will dive into the untold story of Frida Kahlo's art, exploring the life behind the canvas where pain meets passion. Join us to discover Frida Kahlo's powerful journey, her struggles, her resilience, and her masterpieces that tell a story like no other. Let's bring her vibrant, untold story to life. This might not belong in a typical relationship advice post, but stay with me. It's not just about my crumbling marriage. It's also about how I discovered something wild that literally no one talks about. The real genius of Leonardo da Vinci. You know how they say everything happens for a reason? I used to roll my eyes at that kind of thing, until my wife started lying to me about stupid stuff like where she left her earrings, and it led me down this rabbit hole that ended with, well, Da Vinci, of all people. We were in Florence last year, trying to fix things between us. Spoiler, it didn't work. The first cracks in our marriage had already started showing back in the States. Little things. Her phone always face down. That sudden new gym membership. Her passive-aggressive remarks about me living in the past with my books and my weird obsessions. She was all about Instagram yoga and overpriced almond milk. I was more into history, quiet museums, and long conversations. Opposites attract? Maybe. But sometimes they just combust. I remember the moment clearly. We were at the Uffizi, and I was standing in front of a sketch of a flying machine by Leonardo, something barely anyone else was looking at. She was off taking selfies with Botticelli's Venus, rolling her eyes when I tried to tell her how Da Vinci had actually invented the concept of the helicopter centuries before it became real. "Can you not lecture me in front of strangers?" she snapped, loud enough that people turned. That was the first moment I felt embarrassed to be with her. But that wasn't the worst part, not even close. That came later. You probably know Da Vinci for the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, those haunting eyes, that mysterious smile. Everyone thinks of him as a painter, a craftsman. But what most people don't know, and what I discovered in the months after my wife detonated our marriage with lies, is that Leonardo was more than an artist. He was an architect of innovation, a man who coded genius into every line he drew, even when no one noticed. Just like my wife hid deception in every sweet word. Funny how betrayal and brilliance both hide in plain sight. So we're still in Florence, still pretending we're okay. We had this itinerary, her idea, of course, where every day we'd hit another iconic spot. Like a relationship scavenger hunt. Only problem? She was already emotionally checked out. I was just too stupid to realize it. On day 3, we took a train to Milan. I was excited. The Last Supper was the crown jewel of this trip for me. I'm talking goosebumps, lump in the throat excited. I'd studied that painting in college. Not just the biblical scene, but the geometry of it. The math. The way Leonardo played with vanishing points and sacred symmetry. The man didn't just paint a moment, he mapped it like a code. I tried explaining it to her while we waited in line. She was busy texting, laughing. When I nudged her, she shoved her phone in her bag and snapped, "Jesus, can I have 5 minutes without you turning everything into a history podcast?" I said nothing, just nodded. But something was off. That night, back at the hotel, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed again. Normally, I wouldn't have touched it. But something about the way she jerked it away earlier. I can't explain it. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, just needing to see what was at the bottom. So yeah, I looked. And that's when I saw it. A message from someone named Gio, in Italian. I don't speak fluent Italian, but I knew enough to catch the gist. "Can't stop thinking about last night." Heart emoji. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. The walls closed in, hot and thick. I stared at her phone like it was a live grenade. When she stepped out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, I just stood there holding it. Didn't say a word. Just held it out to her. She didn't even pretend to be shocked. She just snatched it from me and hissed, "You went through my phone?" No apology. No explanation. Her first instinct was to blame me. That was the last night we slept in the same bed. But I couldn't leave, not yet. Not when something had started nagging at me during our visit to see the Last Supper. Something about Leonardo's composition. The faces. The way he framed betrayal, not just Judas, but every person at that table reacting to it. It hit different after that night. Like Da Vinci knew exactly what betrayal felt like. Like he'd lived it. We checked out of the hotel the next morning. No big scene, just silence, stiff movements. The cold kind of awkward where you know the damage is already done. I didn't even ask about Gio. I knew I wouldn't get the truth, just more deflections and gaslighting. She'd perfected that over the years. Instead, I stayed an extra day in Milan alone. I needed space. I needed answers. Not just about her, but about something else that had started to tug at me beneath the surface. I couldn't stop thinking about that painting. Not the Last Supper anymore, but Leonardo himself. See, after she left to visit her cousin in Venice, which I later found out was a complete lie, there was no cousin, just Gio and a hotel near Lake Como, I wandered into a small bookstore near the Piazza del Duomo. In the back was a worn, old Italian copy of the Codex Atlanticus, one of Leonardo's famous notebooks. I'd seen digital versions online before, but holding a physical reproduction in my hands was something else. The sketches, the backwards handwriting, the layers of calculations, it wasn't random scribbling. It was organized chaos. Encrypted brilliance. I bought it without hesitation. The shopkeeper gave me a strange look when I said I'd come all the way from America to see Da Vinci's works. He asked if I knew about the map. I thought maybe I'd misheard. What map? I asked. He smiled, one of those slow, cryptic old man smiles that feels like the start of something, and said, Leonardo was not just a painter. He was hiding something. Now, maybe it was just the emotional fallout from my marriage imploding, or maybe I was genuinely losing my grip, but that sentence stuck in my head like a splinter. Hiding something. It echoed everything I'd been feeling, not just about her, but about life, about truth, about the way we assume we know someone, until we don't. That night, in a cheap hostel near Porta Ticinese, I sat up reading through translated pages of the Codex, and I started noticing patterns. Shapes repeating. Coordinates. Star alignments. Mechanical diagrams layered over human anatomy. And then, a sketch of what looked like a circle split into 7 segments, with strange symbols inside. It felt intentional. Like he'd left a trail. Like Da Vinci, just like my wife, had built a life around secrets. The difference? Leonardo's secrets led to genius. Hers led to destruction. Back in the States, everything felt like static. I came home to an apartment that still smelled like her hair products and bullshit. Her closet was half empty, but she'd left behind enough to make sure I'd feel her absence like a ghost. Some shoes, a scarf, a half-used shampoo bottle. Emotional landmines, every one of them. She texted once. I just need space. Please don't make this harder. No apology. No clarity. Just more vagueness, more lies wrapped in fake kindness. I didn't respond. Instead, I threw myself into decoding the Codex like it was my lifeline. Remember that 7-part circle I found in Leonardo's notes? I started researching it obsessively. Cross-referencing every page of the Codex Atlanticus, looking at digital archives, emailing obscure university departments like some unhinged conspiracy theorist. It sounds crazy, but it gave me something she never could. Purpose. And then it clicked. Leonardo had embedded 7 thematic ideas within that segmented circle. Not just geometry. These were philosophical, scientific, and mechanical principles, each one centuries ahead of his time. I started calling them the 7 minds of Leonardo. And maybe I was projecting, sure. But I started seeing the symmetry between those circles, and the lies I had ignored for years. Lie number 1. She said she never cheated in any of her past relationships. Lie number 2. She said she wanted to travel with me to grow together. Lie number 3. She said she loved the way my mind worked. Lie number 4. She said she hated social media. Lie number 5. She said she didn't drink when I wasn't around. Lie number 6. She said her old friend Gio was gay. Lie number 7. She said she'd never hurt me. 7 lies. 7 circles. Funny how betrayal has its own kind of symmetry. But here's the thing, Leonardo's 7 circles weren't destructive. They were transformative. Like a hidden operating system behind everything he built. I realized. Maybe the real genius of Da Vinci wasn't just that he painted masterpieces or sketched helicopters centuries before flight. Maybe it was that he knew how to hide genius in pain. He lived during a time when you could be jailed or executed for thinking differently. So he disguised his brilliance in backwards script and cryptic drawings. Me? I just let mine rot in a toxic marriage. Until now. About a week after she ghosted off to find herself, I decided I needed answers. Not closure, not peace, just truth. Even if it was ugly. I texted her. Meet me. 1 conversation. That's all I'm asking. To my surprise, she agreed. Said she'd be at a coffee shop we used to go to, the one where she used to pretend to like my rants about Da Vinci, and I used to pretend her kombucha didn't taste like feet. She showed up late, of course, wearing makeup like armor, fake smile in place. When she sat down, I didn't even say hi. Just looked her in the eye and asked, "Who's Gio?" Her face barely twitched. Then came the sigh. That deep, overly theatrical sigh, like she was the victim in this story. He's someone who listens, okay, she said. Someone who actually sees me. That line. That line. After everything I gave, my time, my energy, my loyalty, that was what I got in return? A guy who sees her? What the hell did she think I was doing all those years looking through her? I asked if she slept with him. She didn't even hesitate. Yes. Twice. But it didn't mean anything. Twice. Didn't mean anything? Like I was supposed to nod and say, oh okay, thanks for clarifying. Like that was supposed to make it better. I asked her why. Not in an angry, confrontational way. I was past rage. I just wanted to understand. And this was her answer. You're too obsessed with your little puzzles. Your books. Your dead artists. I needed something real. Something real. As if she hadn't married the most painfully real version of me I had to give. It hit me right then. She didn't hate Da Vinci. She hated that I had a mind that wandered places she couldn't follow. She resented the depth she couldn't match. She was never threatened by another man. She was threatened by imagination. I stood up to leave. She looked up at me with that fake innocent pout and said, "You're going to throw away everything we had?" I almost laughed. "You threw it away," I said. "I just finally noticed it was gone." And just like that, it was over. But not the story. Not even close. Because in the days that followed, I started tracing Da Vinci's 7 minds to actual locations, hidden patterns in his sketches that might point to something real. And that's when things took a turn I never saw coming. I went off the radar for a bit after that conversation. Deleted social media, muted mutual friends, stopped answering texts, especially hers. I needed silence. The kind of silence where ideas can breathe, where you can hear your thoughts without someone else's lies echoing inside them. And in that silence, I started seeing something different in Leonardo's work. It started with The Last Supper. Yeah, the one I'd stood in front of just days before in Milan, feeling like a fool next to a cheating wife. But now, I wasn't looking at Jesus or Judas or perspective lines. I was looking beneath, behind, the structure. I started layering sketches from the Codex Atlanticus over the painting. Not literally, digitally. I pulled files from museum archives, university collections, and an old French blog that had somehow digitized Leonardo's mirrored notes. And then, like a crack forming in stone, a pattern started to emerge. It wasn't a painting. It was a blueprint. I don't say that lightly. I'm not one of those YouTube crackpots who thinks the Mona Lisa is a secret map to Atlantis. But when you cross-section some of Leonardo's engineering sketches, his gears, pulleys, and mechanical birds, against the proportions and placements in The Last Supper, they fit too well. It was like he'd embedded the schematic of a machine within the spiritual symbolism. A machine built out of human posture and geometry. But here's the insane part. The machine, it wasn't just mechanical. It looked anatomical. Like it was meant to interface with the body, or even the mind. I started calling it the consciousness engine. I know how that sounds. But stay with me. Leonardo once wrote, "The painter's mind must be a mirror to nature, reflecting all the movements of man and soul." What if he wasn't being poetic? What if he was being literal? What if he wasn't just hiding machines in art, but hiding the future? The more I dug, the more it made sense. His journals talked about optics, sound, memory, even what we'd now call neural pathways. And this wasn't Da Vinci writing random ideas in the dark. This was intention. Design. So while my ex was out there probably posting thirst traps with Geo under some quote about healing, I was slowly peeling back the layers of a 500-year-old genius trying to speak through the ages. And the scariest part? I think someone else already knew. Because that night, my inbox pinged with an anonymous email. No subject. No text. Just an image. A photo of me in front of The Last Supper. Taken from behind. From inside the museum. I never posted that photo. I never asked anyone to take it. And I was alone. I stared at that email for a long time. The photo was grainy, taken from the back of the hall, but there I was, standing motionless in front of The Last Supper, hands in my pockets, completely unaware someone was behind me. At first, I thought maybe it was a tourist. Maybe someone snapped it and found me online somehow. But I hadn't posted anything. Not a selfie, not a story, nothing. I was off-grid the whole trip. The photo was too deliberate, too personal. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I got a second email. Same sender. No name, no subject. Just a line of mirrored Italian text in the body. Ci cerca la macchina, trova la morte. I flipped it around. He who seeks the machine finds death. This wasn't paranoia anymore. Someone was watching. Someone knew what I was doing with Leonardo's work. For the first time, I thought about stopping, deleting everything, moving on, going back to the old job, getting drunk at trivia night, maybe even apologizing to people I ghosted, pretending none of this happened. But here's the thing, I knew something now, and knowing changes you. Once you glimpse the pattern beneath the paint, you can't unsee it. Once you realize Leonardo da Vinci left behind a functional design for human potential, how do you just go back to Netflix and frozen pizza? So I pushed on. I printed everything. I mapped the sketches. I made a corkboard like a madman in a conspiracy thriller. And I started focusing on one of the 7 segments of Leonardo's conceptual circle, the one labeled Vortici dell'anima, vortices of the soul. That's when I noticed the overlap between his anatomical drawings and his early water experiments. The same spiral patterns showed up in sketches of the human brain and in his depictions of flowing water. Leonardo believed the mind worked like water, constantly moving, influenced by pressure, pulled by unseen forces. And if his theory was right, then the machine hidden in his work might not just interface with thought. It might amplify it. It wasn't about flight. It wasn't about war. It was about consciousness. And just as I was starting to feel the thrill of discovery again, I found my apartment door unlocked. Nothing stolen. But my desk drawer, the one with the original sketches I'd printed from the archives, was wide open. They hadn't taken anything. They just wanted me to know they'd been there. So yeah, someone had been in my apartment. They didn't steal my laptop, my passport, or even the little lockbox where I kept emergency cash. They left that in plain sight. But they moved one thing, a printout of a page from the Codex Madrid, page 23b. The sketch of a hydraulic machine, barely legible, with tiny mirrored text beneath it that mentioned una porta nascosta, a hidden door. I hadn't even translated that yet. So not only had someone been in my place, they were ahead of me. Now here's where it gets weirder. 2 days later, my ex, yes, the same one who couldn't tell the truth if her life depended on it, shows up at my doorstep. I open the door to find her standing there, dramatic as ever, sunglasses on, like she's in a soap opera. Behind her is a car idling with someone in the driver's seat. A man. I don't even ask who it is. She says, "I need to talk to you. Please. It's important." I almost slammed the door in her face. But something in her tone stopped me. She wasn't smug. She looked nervous. I let her in. She didn't sit down, just paced. And then she says, "I think you're in danger." Now, if this were a movie, this is where I'd lean in, demand answers, and we'd team up. But in real life, I said, "You sleeping with him too? The guy in the car?" She didn't answer. Typical. Instead, she says, "They contacted me after you and I separated. I thought it was just some weird fan of your research. But then they started asking about your routines, where you worked, what you were accessing." My stomach dropped. She told them everything. She looked at me like she deserved sympathy and said, "I didn't know it was serious, okay? I thought maybe you were just being dramatic." But then I started getting scared. I asked her what she told them. She hesitated, and that's when I knew everything. She sold me out for drama, attention, or God knows what. Probably fed Gio a sob story too, about being the supportive intellectual wife to a man unraveling. She had lied again. Lied until the truth became a liability. I told her to leave. She tried to touch my arm. I stepped back. "Don't ever come here again," I said. "This isn't about you anymore." And it wasn't. Because in that moment, I finally let her go. Not just emotionally, mentally. I stopped thinking about her as a person with potential and saw her as a pattern of betrayal I kept trying to reinterpret. As she left, I looked back at the Codex page. And something clicked. In the background of the sketch, almost like a watermark, was a mirrored note I hadn't seen before. I inverted it. "The machine lives beneath the convent. The 7 eyes guard the vortex." A convent. The same one connected to the Last Supper. Santa Maria del Grazie. Leonardo hadn't just hidden a concept. He'd hidden a location. So I booked a flight to Milan under a different name. Paid cash. Burned my old laptop. Switched phones. Paranoid? Sure. But when your ex-wife leaks your movements to people who break into your home and leave cryptic death threats, paranoia starts to feel like common sin. Leonardo painted the Last Supper on the wall of the convent's refectory, sure, but the building is older than that, and way more complicated underground than most people realize. Beneath it are layers of storage vaults, old priest quarters, and a network of sealed-off tunnels from the 15th century. I'd read whispers in obscure Italian forums. Restoration workers who'd gotten sick after entering sealed sections. A few even claimed they saw strange shapes carved in stone, spirals, and eye-like patterns no one could trace to Catholic symbolism. Sounded familiar. So the next morning, I slipped in on a guided tour, dressed like the world's most exhausted tourist. I broke off from the group near the cloister, found a maintenance door I'd spotted on Google Earth, and picked the lock using a little trick I learned back in college. Don't ask. The tunnels below were dark. Cool. Smelled like damp stone and centuries-old dust. I used a flashlight wrapped in red cellophane to preserve my night vision. I followed the old brick walls, looking for anything resembling the seven eyes from Leonardo's sketches. I passed locked doors, alcoves, and even a dried-up well, nothing. Until I saw the carving. A spiral, vortici dell'anima, with 7 radiating dots. Just like his sketch. Below it, a Latin inscription. Sub oculo septimo, veritas. Under the 7th eye, the truth. I pressed the 7th dot. Nothing happened. But I felt a vibration beneath my feet. A subtle click. I pushed harder. The brick shifted, just barely, and then a grinding sound echoed behind me. A door had opened in the wall behind the carving. It wasn't dramatic. Just a slight hiss of old air being released. And behind it, stone steps spiraling down into blackness. I took one look back, part of me hoping to see a way out. There wasn't one. So I descended. And at the bottom, there wasn't treasure. No glowing orb. No ancient scrolls. Just a room. Cold. Stone. Silent. But on the far wall was a fresco, unfinished, but unmistakably Da Vinci. And at the center of it, embedded into the plaster, was a device. Bronze. Spiraled. With 7 rings. It looked like a compass and a spinal column had a child. And it hummed. I know how this is going to sound. You're going to think I was tired, hallucinating, maybe still processing the whole my wife sold me out to a secret society thing. But I swear on my mother's grave, that room was alive. The device embedded in the wall, it didn't look like any known machine. 7 concentric rings, each inscribed with mirrored script. I recognized some of the phrases from Leonardo's notebooks, references to motion, cognition, the spiritus mundi, world spirit. I reached out. My hand trembled. As soon as my fingers touched the central ring, it rotated. Smooth. Silent. Then the next ring rotated in the opposite direction. Then the third. I hadn't triggered a machine. I'd triggered a sequence. Suddenly the room shifted. Not physically, like walls moving, but something deeper. The air changed. It got heavier, more charged, like the way the atmosphere feels right before a lightning storm. Then I heard it. A low, resonant hum. Like a choir buried under stone. Not music. Not language. Just resonance. Frequency. I swear I felt it in my bones. The fresco on the wall began to shimmer. Not glow, shimmer, like the paint was reacting to the vibrations. Leonardo hadn't just painted with oils. He had used something reactive. Something that responded to sound, pressure, or perhaps consciousness. My heart was pounding. Then the light in the room began to change, slowly shifting hues like a sunrise filtered through water. And in that moment, I saw something. Or maybe it was a thought. Or a memory. Or a dream. I don't even know. But in that space, while the rings turned and the fresco pulsed, I felt Leonardo's mind. Not metaphorically. Literally. Like a blueprint for how he thought. Spirals. Patterns. Recursion. He hadn't just been an inventor. Or an artist. He was building a framework for consciousness. A way to encode thought into physical form. And then, just as fast as it began, it stopped. The rings froze. The humming faded. The colors bled back into the stone. And the room went silent. I stood there, completely still, breathing like I'd run a marathon. Then I noticed the stone tile beneath me had cracked. Inside it, barely visible, a small, bronze object shaped like an eye. I picked it up. Warm to the touch. Smooth, but with faint etchings. One word etched in tiny mirrored Latin, custos. The keeper. I barely had time to tuck the keeper into my jacket pocket before the footsteps started. Heavy. Purposeful. Coming down the spiraling stairs. No way I'd get out through the maintenance door in time. I darted into a narrow alcove, heart slamming in my chest, trying to make myself as small as possible. The only light was the fading glow from the fresco room behind me. The footsteps stopped. A voice whispered in Italian. Harsh. Demanding. I didn't understand most of it, but a few words hit me like a punch. Traditor, pericolo, custode. Traitor. Danger. Keeper. They were looking for the keeper. Me. I held my breath. Then, footsteps retreating, disappearing. I waited 10 minutes, then another 10. I had no idea what to do next. Back upstairs, I realized why my ex had sold me out. She wasn't just playing with petty lies. She was tangled up with these people, or at least with someone who wanted to control whatever Leonardo had. It was the ultimate betrayal more than cheating or lies. She weaponized my trust, turned it into a beacon for enemies I didn't even understand. The weight of it crushed me, but in the midst of that pain, I made a decision. I wasn't going to run anymore. I was going to finish what Leonardo started, or die trying. At my lowest point, exhausted, paranoid, and with the keeper burning a hole in my pocket, I did the unthinkable. I called Gio. Yeah, the guy my ex was obviously cozying up to. I hated the idea. Hated him. But I needed information. I needed allies. Or at least someone who could survive the world I'd just been dragged into. Gio picked up after 3 rings. I know what you found, he said flatly. No hello. No small talk. I was shocked. How did he know? Turns out, Joe's family had been guarding a part of Leonardo's legacy for generations. Secret societies, old feuds, lost inventions. He gave me the rundown in a low voice, like telling a bedtime story but about guns. And then he dropped the bomb. My ex-wife had been feeding info to a rival faction all along. Not just for money. For power. He told me these groups fought over control of the Keeper because it was more than a device. It was the key to unlocking Leonardo's full architect of innovation system. A system that could, theoretically, revolutionize technology, energy, even human cognition. And whoever controlled it, controlled the future. I swallowed hard. You're going to have to trust me, Gio said. And despite every warning bell screaming in my head, I agreed. Working with Gio felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. He was cold, calculating, exactly the kind of guy my ex loved, and the exact opposite of who I wanted to be. Every conversation felt like a chess game, where I was the pawn trying to play king. We planned a rendezvous at an abandoned villa outside Milan, where Gio claimed a safe house was hidden. When I arrived, the place was empty, except for a single envelope taped to the door. Inside? A note in my ex's handwriting. You're too late. They have it now. And so do I. Goodbye. I stood there, stunned. That was the moment I realized she hadn't just betrayed me once. She was playing all sides. And I was the last one to know. The villa wasn't safe at all. It was a trap. I barely escaped with my life after gunshots echoed through the night. After that night, I disappeared for days. No calls. No messages. I was running on pure adrenaline, exhaustion, and a broken heart heavier than I ever imagined. Every lie she told, every secret she kept, felt like a punch to the gut. But the worst wasn't the betrayal, it was realizing how much I trusted her. I sat in a cheap motel, staring at the keeper, the small bronze eye, wondering if all of this was worth it. If the secrets, the danger, the betrayals, if I was worth it. But then I remembered something Leonardo wrote in one of his journals, translated by Gio. Genius is not the product of solitude, but of struggle. The architect of innovation builds not only with mind, but with heart and courage. I realized then that I wasn't just chasing a device. I was chasing a legacy. A legacy my ex tried to destroy because she feared what it represented. I decided to fight back. Not for her. Not for Gio. For me. For the truth. So here I am, back home, scarred but standing. I've learned a lot from this nightmare. First, never underestimate how much someone you love can betray you, and how deeply that cuts. My ex wasn't just bitchy or a liar. She was a storm I never saw coming, twisting everything I thought we had. Second, Leonardo da Vinci was more than a painter or craftsman. His hidden genius was his understanding of systems, not just machines, but of people, nature, and the mind. He was the original architect of innovation, designing ideas centuries ahead of their time. And maybe that's why his legacy is still dangerous. Third, trust yourself. When the world feels like it's crumbling, when betrayal blindsides you, you're the one who has to pick up the pieces. So if you're going through hell with someone who's supposed to be your partner, don't give up on yourself. Betrayal sucks. It hurts. But sometimes, it's the brutal push you need to uncover your own hidden genius. And yeah, if your wife lies to you and drags you into secret societies and ancient mysteries, well, welcome to the club. At least Leonardo would have appreciated the drama.